Hello, Julian.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. And how are you tonight?
I'm all right. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to Veterinary Ramblings. My name is Mike Brampton.
And I'm Julian Hode. Let's talk about, what are we doing? We could talk about regulatory bodies tonight.
Regulatory bodies?
Yeah. With every board, you've got to have a certain number of lay people on it that can actually give an unbiased view.
Right.
I think. I don't really know. I'm not explaining it well, but I know someone who can.
Okay.
That's my mate Adrian, who I was at vet school with, because he's on the board for the Nursing and Midwifery Council. I'll give him a buzz, see if he can come on tonight.
Okay.
Hold on. Adrian, mate, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, me, yeah. Julian. Julian who?
Yeah, close friends.
We're at college together? No, that was John. Julian. Just pretend you know me, all right? Okay, yeah. Do you want to come on Veterinary Ramblings, mate? Tonight? Can you make it now? Yeah? Excellent, great. Grab a drink and see you tonight. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he's going to come on.
So what's his name?
Adrian Ward.
Adrian Ward. Hi, I'm Mike Brampton.
And my name is Julian Hode.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings. And here he is. How seamless was that?
Fantastic. Excellent.
So let's get him. And welcome to Adrian Ward.
Hello, Adrian.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So I'm drinking Negroni, and it's a jolly nice one. What do you want, Adrian?
This is just a gin and tonic. This is a Sipsmith gin and tonic with some Fever Tree tonic water as recommended by Sipsmith. Indeed.
Other tonic waters are available.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Jolly good. So is that a plain Sipsmith then?
Sorry, is that it's a plain one? Yes. Yeah. Some of the flavoured ones, they're very nice, but you probably only have a glass or two. Whereas the plain stuff, generally speaking, is session gin, really.
Oh, I think Mike and I could make a session out of a lot of flavoured gins. and you've been known to, Adrian. You've been known to.
No, you must have me confused with someone else.
All right. Okay. So is gin your go-to drink then, Adrian?
Well, I'm searching for my go-to drink. It depends what day of the week it is.
It's normally my whiskey.
That's generally after I've had quite a lot of gin. Because it's only by then I forget how dreadful whiskey makes me feel. Probably because I've had a large amount of gin beforehand.
So you drink gin and then you go around to Julian's house and drink his whiskey?
I would never do that because it would involve driving or sourcing other form of transport, and it's quite a long way. So what I normally do is before I have gin, I go over to Julian's house. I have the gin there, probably with some beer and some wine as well, which again I think may contribute to my feeling of unwellness the next day. And then I decide that when Julian asked me if I want this particularly nice whiskey, I decide that maybe that would be the whiskey that doesn't give me a hangover.
Right. I think we'd better reassure our American listeners that in the UK we have various forms of motor rescue companies that will come out and rescue you if you break down, and one of them is the Royal Automobile Club, which is known as the RAC, and then the other one, which is probably appropriate at this moment, is of course AA.
Yep.
Yes, I've been to their meetings.
Have you?
I've stood up and said, "My name is Julian Hode, and my car wouldn't start." They kicked me out.
Did they really? Oh. Is that because you were drinking at the AA meeting?
Yeah, I spilled it as I turned around. And we do, I have to add, we do in no way condone heavy drinking.
No. And other forms of imbibing are, of course, available. Yeah, absolutely.
So the reason we called you in at such short notice was because I was trying to explain to Mike why certain boards needed lay members on it. Yes. And I thought, I can't explain it, but I knew someone who could, because are you chair of the Nursing and Midwifery Council.
I'm chair of one of their disciplinary committees, yes.
Right.
What of their disciplinary? So you're a vet, aren't you, Adrian?
I am, yes.
Right. So you are chair of the disciplinary committee of the Nursing and Midwifery Council,
That's it, yes.
but you're a vet.
Yes. I am a lay chair, which means I am not a nurse or a midwife, but generally speaking for the Nursing and Midwifery Council, all of the chairs of a fitness to practice panel tend to be lay members.
So this is a disciplinary panel. Is
Yeah,
this,
so
did you
basically-
get into this? Did you get into this with something to do with naughty nurses being naughty?
Well, it started off with vets being naughty, and then I moved on to nurses after that. And I deal with accountants as well. It's just naughty people everywhere, really, or naughty professionals everywhere.
You can't get naughty accountancy, can you?
Well, you would think that. You would think that, but generally speaking, the strange thing happens when very, very large sums of money are involved.
Are we talking accountancy or nurses?
I think you could probably apply it pretty much everywhere.
Okay. Right.
But at the end of the day, you know, there are bad apples and unfortunate mistakes regardless of the profession you're in, and when you are providing a service to the members of the general public, then the public need to know that when they engage a professional to do a job, they're going to get essentially someone who is competent to do that role and is not going to do something that they shouldn't. And that's why
Can we get back onto disciplining naughty nurses? I quite like this.
I think you're getting carried away, Mike. I think
Yeah,
surely.
he's looking a bit flushed, isn't he?
Well, presumably you're not allowed to whip them into fence.
Not nowadays, no.
Okay.
So it's actually it's quite serious stuff, isn't it? Because
It is.
you are part of the body that keeps the public safe from people who I was going to say have made mistakes. Now, your job is to see whether people have made mistakes, or whether, I'm trying to find a better way of putting this, whether they're just shit. There's probably a better way of putting it, but whether people have been negligent.
No, that's actually not the role of a regulator. So
Right.
negligence is generally something that your professional indemnity insurer will become involved in. So most regulators are not interested in negligence. Negligence is basically performing below the standard considered to be acceptable or representative of an averagely competent person. And the threshold for that is relatively low, and it tends to be decided in a civil context. So you take someone to court and you sue them, basically. Professional regulation is far more serious, because that tends to involve breaches either of professional standards or of professional conduct that are far below the standard expected. So it is a pretty serious matter, because when you get to the point where there's a disciplinary committee involved or a tribunal, then that's normally the point where your registration and your professional livelihood is at stake, if you're found to be wanting badly enough.
So these really are people who are being pretty bad, pretty
Yeah,
slow.
generally speaking. I mean, the thing is that there are a number of stages, depending on the regulator you work for. There's a number of stages to the process, which are supposed to sift out the things that are negligence and a matter for the civil courts, or they are something that can be dealt with at an early stage in the process, such as giving a warning or some sort of fixed penalty. If you're talking about accountancy, for example, they use fines quite a lot in accountancy. That doesn't apply to the medical professions. And then you get on to putting restrictions on the type of practice that people can undertake. So what we call conditions of practice for the NMC, or performance protocol for the RCVS, or sending someone for remedial training. And then you're up to the level of suspensions or striking off order, which is obviously the ultimate sanction.
You must hear some horrific stories. I mean, I guess there are often extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, there are cases that are very sad, and fortunately, the regulators, almost without exception, have protocols in place to help people, of course, and particularly pertinent considering the current climate, and very pertinent considering this particular webinar or podcast or webcast is drug abuse and mental health conditions. So sometimes,
yes.
So sometimes you do tend to tea.
What?
Mike looked like he had a mug of tea.
Navy strength rum, mate.
Oh, it's Navy strength rum. Okay, that's fine. I was worried for a moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the instances where someone has there's been a lapse in standards because of a health or condition, and by health that's both physical health and mental health. Most of the regulators can refer those individuals to mechanisms to try and support them and help them return to safe practice, because no regulator really is out to, if you like, get the professional. There is a very strong need for qualified, competent professionals, and the aim is to make sure that the bad apples are removed from the system, to make sure that the rest of us can do our job properly. Because if we're not trusted, then we can't work, and we can't engage our clients, and we can't get a meaningful working relationship with them.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Clients, I guess I've been on the receiving end of a complaint.
And actually, to let you into a secret, Julian, that's why I got involved with the RCBS, because of your experiences when you were on the receiving end, because I felt very strongly that you weren't given a fair shake, as it were, and the process was far too long and drawn out. It
took over a year. I can't correctly. At the end of the day, they were found to be completely in the wrong and were described by the RCBS as malicious. Great, it was thoroughly vindicated. But it was over a year of stress in my life, and the whole process was at the time, I thought, completely without any humanity. It was almost as I was guilty without any trial. And I think that's got better now, hasn't it? It has improved.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the regulators have done quite a lot of work realizing that when you're in the spotlight and you're subject to a regulatory complaint, it is extremely unpleasant, and it's very, very stressful when many of us are already working in an extremely stressful environment. And it is one of these things where when you meet new graduates nowadays, we're talking about vets generally speaking, there is a fear of the Royal College. And the same when you talk to nurses. The nurses just think, well, the NMC's not looking out for me. The NMC is here just basically to take a registration fee and hit me with a big stick periodically. That's not what they're there for. And it's very difficult to try and provide some balance as far as that's concerned.
And it's interesting, I think, because I believe I'm right in saying most of the complaints, certainly in the veterinary profession, most of the complaints are brought about as a result of poor communication.
I would certainly say that is the basis of a lot of complaints. Failure to manage expectations being kind of a subset of that. Unrealistic expectations, sadly. Unfortunately, we can't save every animal. Sometimes it is just their time. It's the natural end of their life, and they're not going to be saved. And unfortunately, the problem with the grieving process, as part of that process, is anger. And if you're like an outside party, someone from outside the family, and you were around and involved at that particular time, then unfortunately it is just the nature of things that you will end up being in the firing line for that. And it's not fair, and it doesn't make it right or anything along those lines. it's really difficult, but that unfortunately is what happens. And sometimes people do these sorts of things in order to try and understand what has happened and to process it, or something along those lines. And yeah, you try and handle these cases as sympathetically as possible. But my focus since I've been with the Royal College is to try and make sure that the process is fair and proportionate. It needs to be there. It is very important, but it needs to be a humane process on both sides.
Sure, and I guess my point was at the time of mine, this was, oh gosh, 10 years ago? 10 years ago?
Yeah, it will be about that, yeah.
Yeah. And what I found most hurtful of all was that there was very, very shoddy communication from the Royal College to me. And in fact, at one stage, I received another complaint. I was in the middle of this complaint, received another complaint with a letter from the RCVS saying, you must account for your actions, that this client is alleged to have gross professional misconduct, and we want to hear your side of the story. And they'd sent the letter to the wrong person. So that wasn't a client of mine at all. And so I phoned them up and said, look, I've been looking for this client. Is she registered under another name? What is it? I can't find the client, I can't find the patient. They said, oh, no, sorry, that was, I didn't say sorry. No, that was someone else. We sent you the wrong letter.
Yeah.
No apology, nothing. And I was there with a blade in my hand thinking, what, shall I end it all now? So I don't want to harp on too much about it, but actually the communication was absolutely abysmal. And if there's one thing that I hope that you've been part of changing, it is that communication has improved.
Well, I would be very hesitant to say I've been instrumental in that, but it is one of these things where I myself and my other veterinary colleagues and the lay members as well, I think are very aware of the human impact that these sort of actions have on both parties, and it's important not to lose sight of that.
Great. I remember a certain brandy tasting at your place.
Yeah, I don't remember that one very clearly, actually.
Okay, move on.
And you couldn't remember your way home, so
I really couldn't. It was awful. It was a lovely brandy. Adrian had been given this amazing bottle of brandy by a client, and poured me the hugest glass of brandy I'd ever had.
We had a very good dinner before this, where we had some very good wine as well.
We had some jolly nice wine, and we had this huge glass of brandy. And my wife drove us home, and this was when you were living in Croydon,
yep, near
where I used to live. And it had been a while since I lived in those parts, so I got a bit lost. And my wife was saying to me, which way now? And I said, I don't know, there's a shortcut. If you turn the next right, then it will get us home very, very quickly indeed. So she took the next right and she said, are you sure about this? Absolutely sure, I said, and nodded off for a while. And I woke up because of the jogging of the car. And we were going down this unmade track. I said, where are we? She said, I'm going down the road you told me to go down 20 minutes ago. I've never been here before. Well, where are we? I don't know. And it was then that she kind of lost her sense of humour. Not fairly understandably.
You drove the car down the North Downs Way, did you?
She did, yeah. Yeah. Possibly at my insistence, I don't know. I have no recollection of that. All I remember was I got a bit of neck pain because I was jogging around because I was trying to fall asleep and the car was going on this unmade track, and she had to reverse 1.5 miles down this single lane road. I was not in the best of places the next day. Vis-a-vis married life.
Again for 6 months, you weren't allowed back out again.
I wasn't allowed to have any dinner with you for about a year, was I?
Yeah. And it was dreadful because I'd run out of the Asda brandy by the time you came over again.
There we go.
And then then I tried to poison Adrian with oysters.
Well, poison is probably too strong a word. I would say make my life a living hell with oysters would probably be more appropriate, because I did wish I was going to die. It was pretty unpleasant. It was just the way that I discovered oysters relatively late on in life, courtesy of Julian, who introduced me to them, and decided that I rather liked them. And so I ate quite a lot of oysters for a couple of years, and then had some oysters one Christmas Eve, where I think probably one of the oysters wasn't quite right, because I was fairly ill the next day.
I used that excuse once. Yeah, I went to a whiskey tasting. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Was that on Veterinary Ramblings?
No.
Oysters can produce this toxin called scrofulatoxin, which is fairly gastric allergic, and it's really a nasty. I'm going to call it an allergy. It may not be an allergy, but hypersensitivity certainly. Certainly a very nasty one to have. And if you have it, and if you eat oysters, because most of them have a bit of scrofulatoxin in them, you get this this mild, or not so mild, allergic response. And what it makes you do is to collapse, usually on the floor of my bathroom, in a semi-comatose state, leading to myself or my wife having to step over the person who's collapsed to use the loo. We could have been nice and moved him, but we didn't. So this was Adrian one night.
So this was the oyster that made this happen, was it? Not the 3 litres of brandy that he...
Well, Julian was very scientific about it, actually, because like any good scientist, he felt that a single event was not sufficient to form a conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what he decided to do was re-challenge and make sure that he ruled out lots of confounding variables.
Yeah.
So as he discovered that fresh oysters cause this reaction, he said, well, how about perhaps we try smoked oysters? Because maybe the smoking will destroy whatever reaction it is, and maybe there's something to do with them being fresh. No, smoked oysters do exactly the same thing. And what was the other type of oyster? Oh, you tried oyster sauce. Oyster sauce.
I tried oyster sauce.
Oyster sauce, okay.
That didn't work either. Did I try dried oysters?
Oh yes, and dried oysters. Dried oysters also provoke the same reaction. So I think we can be reasonably certain it is oysters.
Yeah.
And then nothing to do with the 3 bottles of brandy.
No.
So how are you going to try and kill him next time, then, Julian?
Actually, we both tried to kill each other various times.
Adrian, perhaps you and I ought to have a conversation about this. It's very trying to kill you.
I'm going to change tack there for a minute.
Well,
okay.
I want you to change tack because I noticed there that you were cracking a bottle of Harris gin.
I know. I've got to change tack because look, I've just tried this. This is my first swig of Isle of Harris gin. Mate, this is amazing.
You're enjoying it?
It says infused with sugar kelp from the Outer Hebrides, or Hebrides, as I heard someone call it. And you can smell the seaweed. So it's got fever tree, tonic, there's a bit of lemon in there, and over all that, it smells of the sea. Oh, this is great. My only worry is that we're not going to be out of lockdown before I finish this. And so, Adrian, you may never get a chance to try it, I'm afraid.
Where did you get it from?
Mike got it for me.
Paris.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually got it. So they don't ship it anywhere, I guess.
Well, they will ship it. They're very, very protective about the whole thing. It's a fascinating place, but they've got a few interesting ideas as to how to keep the money on the island. And one of those ideas is let's not sell more than 1 bottle at a time to anybody from off the island. It's like an inverse marketing thing.
So it's supply and demand, essentially.
Yeah.
Making it very exclusive.
Yeah, I went there a few years ago when I was doing Tour de Vet Scotland. So I got off the ferry and thought, oh, distillery, got to go there. And it turned out it was the Harris Gin Distillery. They'd only sell me one bottle. And
You went back with a false moustache on the next day. Would they have recognised you and said, "Oh no, I don't think so"?
that's exactly it. So what I did was I waited outside, and there were a few American tourists had gone round, and I waited for the overseas tourists to visit the distillery, because then obviously you have your distillery tour and you go through the shop. So I collared a couple of American tourists and said, "You're not buying a bottle of gin?" "No, we'd love to, but we're not." I said, "Okay, fair enough." So would you buy a bottle, but I'll pay for it? And so we went back up to the counter, and the chap said, "I'm only selling you one bottle." I went, "That's fine, but I'd also like to pay for a bottle for my new friends, because they'd like to buy a bottle as well." So they bought a bottle, and it was all going swimmingly until the man handed over the one bottle to me and the one bottle to them, and they stuffed it into their bag and ran. So I legged it out of the shop with my bottle and my box to post it, and I was greatly relieved to find just outside the door 2 Americans going, he fell for that one, didn't he? So that was it. But I still had to put them on the bicycle and cycle them up to the local post office and post them myself, because they refused to post them from or do a delivery directly from the distillery itself. There it is. Beautiful bottle, isn't it? It's like really a lovely vase if you cut the top off it.
I'm gonna put some fairy lights in this. Sorry, you don't call fairy lights anymore, do you? They're
no, that's not PC.
Not, is it?
No,
because
it's just going to
magical
cut that
creatures might.
Yeah.
What have you got against ferries?
Ferries or fairies?
No, ferries. Fairy lights. They won't fit. They're too big.
Yeah, ferries don't work anymore because of A, Brexit, and B, lockdown. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And C, rust.
Yeah, and you're not going to put a fairy light in there anyway, because fairy lights are like this big.
They're really huge, yeah.
Oh, they're that big.
And you know what happened last time you used a big light, don't you? Last time he tried to light himself so he looked like a superstar. You know, we've got lighting things on here, and he used the headlight off a what was it, Triumph Herald?
It was Triumph Herald, yeah.
Triumph Herald, and he secured said light, which burns very hot, with hot melt glue. So we got halfway through the show, and suddenly all the lights went out. Oof. Yeah, so no.
And then smoke started coming out of the holder. I thought, ooh, that's not good, is it?
And that's why you should use a regulator, because a regulator controls the voltage between components. Oh no, it's a resistor, isn't it?
It's a resistor, yeah.
It's a resistor, okay.
Yeah, I think a regulator is something you use on your BCD.
No, a regulator is someone you use on the Nursing and Midwifery Council.
Oh. Which, getting back to that, this disciplining naughty nurses. How do you get that job then?
How did I get it? Well, I
show an aptitude for disciplining naughty nurses.
Well, we're going back onto the wrong subject again.
Well, you're the regulator.
I'm not the regulator. I'm an independent member of their disciplinary committee.
You're the chair of the disciplinary committee.
Well, just one of them. There's lots, but I applied for a role with the Royal College first. So it was advertised in the Vet Record, if I remember correctly. And because of Julian's experience, I thought, well, I'd like to get involved in that to make sure that vets get a bit more of a...
You'll get me next time round.
Yeah, probably, yeah. How did he get away with that? I know this guy. How did he get away with that? I'm going to become part of the committee, and we'll get him one day. You wait.
So I was successful in joining the RCVS. And because I've done investigative work before when I used to work in pharmaceuticals, I quite like the, gathering information and formulating views and things like that. And so I thought, well, I quite enjoy doing this. Can I do it somewhere else? And did a bit of research. And of course, all of the regulators have a similar regulatory process, and they all need lay members. And so I just started applying.
suddenly realised that the name of the show is Veterinary Ramblings, and we've rambled. We haven't done much of the veterinary stuff.
Yes.
No.
And so I wondered whether we could bring you back to the Bella Moss Foundation at all, because you're heavily involved with the Bella Moss Foundation, or you were at one stage.
Yes, I haven't been for some time due to personal commitments elsewhere and things, but I was quite heavily involved with them when I used to work at Veterinary. Other pharmaceutical companies do exist, and I did quite a lot of work on antimicrobial resistance, and so that was something that the Bella Moss Foundation was quite heavily involved in, trying to encourage people to prescribe appropriately. And so I did some work with them on that basis.
Do you want to tell us just a little bit, just not a lot, just a little bit about the Bella Moss Foundation? Because I'm well aware that not many people in this country, let alone abroad, may have heard of the Bella Moss Foundation. And it's actually quite an important one. It's fairly pivotal in terms of the antimicrobial movement in the veterinary profession, I think. Yes,
I think Jill Moss, who is the founder of the foundation, has been doing a lot of work to try and raise awareness of antimicrobial resistance. Certainly before it really hit the public consciousness to the level it has now. And this was all precipitated when she lost her own dog following a MRSA an MRSA surgical site infection, and sadly that claimed the life of her dog, Bella, hence the charity's name. And so she kind of realised that not many vets were aware of the problem, or at least were aware of it but didn't really feel it would happen to them, like many things. I think human nature being what it is, we hear of these dreadful things happening and think, well, okay, well, they were just unlucky, or it's very unlikely, or whatever. And actually, the problem with antimicrobial resistance is just a matter of time. And some of our behaviours and the behaviours of our clients and the behaviours of our colleagues in other medical professions have made this much more of a hot potato than and much faster than would have been the case otherwise. Jill did a lot of work canvassing support from key opinion leaders inside the veterinary profession. So she did a lot of work with the RVC and some of the clinicians there. I worked with her as well on some aspects, and she also provided some help and assistance to pet owners who were having issues with antimicrobial resistance, where the clinician was struggling, and she would act as a facilitator to enable the clinician dealing with that case to contact someone in the UK who knew a lot about that sort of thing. So, for example, Professor David Lloyd did a lot of work with her. Dr. Tim Nuttall, I can't recall if Tim is currently a professor or not, but I know that he moved up to Edinburgh, and I think he might have got his professorship. Can't remember. But
I think he did.
Yeah. So if you're listening to,
so it's a travesty if he didn't. But yeah,
yes,
I think
Tim definitely really knows his stuff, and so she would allow people to network. But it's an awful lot of work for one person to do, and although she is supported by a group of volunteers, I think there is an awful lot of demand for services that, being a charity, and obviously charities rely on fundraising to enable them to perform their function. It can be quite challenging at times, both in terms of money and time and resources as well.
And I have to say, there's a little plug there. If anyone did have a little money to spare, then the Bella Moss Foundation is worth looking into. They were, as I say, pivotal in the veterinary antimicrobial resistance movement, and still are, offering not chastisement, but actually positive help to vets and owners who are trying to find the correct antimicrobial treatment for their pets.
And they do provide some training as well. So training for nurses in the areas of infection control, for example. So there are a number of courses. that are very useful for veterinary nurses to enable them to take the lead in infection control and practices. So there's some really good resources there.
Now, I brought up antimicrobial resistance in the hope that we could entice you to take part in this challenge we've been putting out to our guests on the provision of good quality CPD in a minute, the 60-second CPD challenge. And I wondered whether you might be interested in taking part in that.
I could, but can I
Excellent.
change the
Good.
brief?
I'll get the timer sorted out.
sorry, what can you?
Sorry,
Can I change the brief slightly? Because I had a think about it.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the things that I would try and sell someone in 60 seconds about antimicrobial resistance, they may already know. So can I do a couple, 2, possibly 3 top tips for a general practitioner?
That'd be fantastic. Yeah. The 60-second challenge is really what you want to do. And so you want to talk about top tips for general practitioners.
Yes. So I'll start with the first one. So antimicrobial resistance, one of the most difficult things is people think that drugs will fix all their problems. They won't, of course. There's often an awful lot of pressure. So what you've got to do is get them on side. Quick thing to give them is to remember that antimicrobial resistance itself is contagious via the DNA. The DNA moves, the DNA encoding for the resistance moves, not the bacteria. So if you're in contact with an animal that has an antimicrobial resistant bacterium on it, then your bacteria can pick up that genetic element and vice versa. So if you use an antimicrobial irresponsibly, you can put the owner and the pets at risk as well as their family as well. If you're dealing with people trying to persuade them to treat fleas, use mosquitoes as an analogy for fleas. So you don't kill mosquitoes by taking a tablet to kill the mosquitoes after they've bitten you. Likewise, giving your pet something that kills the mosquitoes after kill the fleas after they've bitten is pointless, because that is after they've got the problem, not before it. So there you go.
Good effort.
Excellent, fantastic. That's brilliant. That's really, really good. You were slightly over, so I'm going to charge you a glass of gin next time I see you. But that was really good. It was really good. Actually, it makes perfect sense.
I forgot how to turn this off again.
You don't want to stop a dog being bitten by fleas.
You want to stop them being bitten in the first place.
Yeah.
Killing the fleas after they've bitten the animal is pointless, because like mosquitoes, it's the bite that causes the problem. You need to stop them biting. And the biggest barrier to getting effective control of any skin disease is making sure they address the fleas. And very few vets are able to persuade a resistant owner to treat their house without using something that is meaningful to them, because you're trying to persuade them to treat something they can't see. And there's the whole negative connotation that if you've got fleas, your house is in some way dirty, which puts people on the defensive straight away and makes them much less amenable to considering alternatives.
Whereas it should just be a part of normal pet ownership, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
you have a pet. Well, part of that having a pet is let's make sure your pet doesn't get fleas. So let's protect the house against fleas, just to make sure your pet doesn't get it.
Because you could argue that we're doing it all backwards, because we should be treating the house. If you treat the house, that's where the majority of the population is. So if you're looking at it from a population dynamic side of things, treating the house is more important than protecting your pet.
Yeah.
Reducing the number of bites. So and all that your flea control that you put on your animal is doing is mopping up the stragglers.
Yeah. We had a client a few years back who, do you remember there was a product, I can't say the name of it, but it rhymes with Uvan Awil.
Yeah.
And it was an environmental spray. And it said in big letters on the side, must not be sprayed onto the pet. And whereas Uvan Op, again going into the rhyming thing, could be sprayed onto the animal. It did kill them quite a bit, but it could still be sprayed onto them. There are very, very, very good flea treatments available now that don't in any way injure your pet. But this was back in the dark days of 15 or 20 years ago, when some of them weren't very good, and some of them were owned by a company called, I can't say the name. But I can say that they rhymed with.
You can't say the name because you know they threatened to take me to the High Court.
They did. It rhymes with Flob Partin.
Do I have to defend my actions in trying to stop this particular company? Very simple, really. Is that the main ingredient, which does kill fleas very effectively, is permethrin in this particular flea treatment.
Yes, it's extremely good at killing cats.
It's also particularly good at killing cats.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it with relative impunity with your dogs, as long as they don't live with cats. But don't you dare get it anywhere near your cat, because your cat will endure a very painful and spectacular death.
Awful. So if anyone's watching this, please do read the directions on your flea treatment.
Yeah.
If it says do not use on cats, don't use it on cats. Simple as that. And this is the story I want to tell about this chap who brought this cat in that was fitting and really having a miserable time with things. We got it fine. It was okay. We treated it and it was better. But he'd used this product on it. And I said, you do know this says do not use directly on the animal. And he said, oh no, I know that. I read that. I said, well, how come it's been poisoned by it? Well, I sprayed it on the inside of an Hessian sack and put the cat in and rubbed it.
Brilliant.
You would think that having to work around the directions so much would have been a bit of a clue that that's a bad thing to do.
You think so? What's always struck me about that was the fact that he very correctly said an Hessian sack rather than a Hessian sack. I was always impressed by that, but still felt the need to charge him double for trying to kill his cat.
Quite right, too.
So,
Right.
well, but that's great, actually, Adrian. Thank you about the 60-second CPD.
Good lady, you're whacking this Irish gin tonight, aren't you?
I love this. I hope you wouldn't notice. I think
Yeah, I noticed. I'm
whipping in. See?
I'm quietly pleased, actually.
Oh, it's great.
Very
It smells of the sea.
Mm.
Fantastic. I'm going to put some whelks in it later. Try that.
No, don't. It's interesting because
wait.
they actually recommend that you add an essence of sea kelp, which is it's about 60% proof, and it changes that gin very dramatically. And in my opinion, not for the better, which is why I haven't got you there.
I may have misheard. It sounded like essence of seagull.
Sea kelp.
Sea kelp.
Sea kelp. Yeah.
And sea kelp could save us all, couldn't it?
Eventually.
Sea kelp is the most amazing absorber of CO2. And accounts, I'm probably going to get the figures completely wrong, but I believe accounts for something like 30% of all CO2 absorption.
Yeah, and I think it's relatively easy to farm, and if it's the right type of seaweed, and I'm not talking utter rubbish, you can make plastics from it as well. Absolutely.
Well, this is sea kelp. This is Laminaria digitata, and you can indeed make fully recyclable plastics and absorbable plastics from it. Oh, I've got a joke. Now, as you know, I always try and blend the joke in, if I can, to the subject we've had. And so it's very difficult segueing onto the joke I want to tell from what I've been talking about. But I remember, Adrian, when we were at college, we used to talk about biscuits during some of the clinical rounds, didn't we? We used to try and get the names of various biscuits in.
Yeah, so there were a number of games a bit like that.
Yeah, we'd say, that the cat has a digestive problem. We've been having a hobnob about it, and wondering whether some sort of malted milk product would help. Things like that. And I was thinking of different biscuits. And there's a chocolate wafer biscuit in an individual packet, isn't there? I can't remember the name of it. Named after an aquatic seabird. Do you remember it?
Albatross.
Penguin.
Oh, the penguin. That reminds me of a joke. So there's this. It works, doesn't it? It worked really well.
Yeah, that was incredibly smooth. The way I love the way you just guided the conversation around there.
Yeah, I could feel the kind of vacuum trying to draw the name out of me.
David Frost would do that.
Yeah,
about the same height as me. Yeah.
What you're saying, Julian, is you've got a joke about a penguin.
Oh, I have. There's a
I
good
think
idea.
you've told that joke online before.
No, it's a different one.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not about the penguin blowing the seal.
Right, good.
That was awful. That was just rude.
Yeah.
I've grown from there.
It's not that joke, is it?
It's not that joke, but unfortunately, because it's not rude, it's not so funny.
Go on.
But there's a policeman driving along, and he sees a man walking along the side of the road. He's got 3 penguins walking behind him. That's what the penguins do. And he pulls over. He says,
Good impersonation of a penguin.
that was the
I
man.
thought it was, that penguin needs an antiemetic.
or a laxative.
Get onto that later.
And the policeman says, what are you doing? He said, just taking my penguins for a walk. He said, do you have a license for your penguins? He says, I don't want a license at all. He says, they're a wild animal. He says, they're not. They're my penguins. He said, they're wild. You should not be taking those out on the street. Okay, they're not your penguins. They're a wild animal. Show me your wild animal license. Haven't got one. Okay, they need to go to a zoo. Do they? Yes. All right. Thanks very much. Right. A couple of days later, policeman's driving along and he sees the bloke walking along again. He's got the penguins. He pulls down and says, here. I saw you the other day. I pulled you up. He said, you may have done, officer. You seem familiar. He said, I pulled you up. I spoke to you about your penguins. Yeah, a lot of people do. They're my penguins. No, I did. I told you they ought to go to a zoo. That's right. I remember you now. Yes, you did. Yes, thank you very much for that. Well, yeah, and? Yeah, thank you. I took them to the zoo. They loved it. I'm taking them to the beach today. Okay, that doesn't work. I'm crossing that joke off. That doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I've got a joke, Julian. I'm going to tell a joke about Midwifery Council.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So what's it called when a hospital runs out of midwives? It's called a midwife crisis. Good as your penguin joke.
It's better. It's better than the penguin joke. I like that. Can we get Alicia, our producer, to get rid of the penguin joke, but perhaps morph me into saying that joke, Mike? Because that would be better.
Yeah, I'm sure she could do that. Virtual reality and 3-dimensional rendering and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
A little bit of deep fakery.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a CPD certificate.
You have you?
I have.
Good.
I have. So here we go. There we go. So it says Certificate of Geeky Wonderfulness.
Yep.
Because as Adrian knows, I refer to him in dear terms as a geek, because Adrian is an amazing technophile, and all the problems we've had in technically over the last
every single one of them.
Yeah. and you could cure every single one. So here we go. Certificate of Geeky Wonderfulness. This certifies that once again, Veterinary Ramblings has delivered a full quantum of delicious loveliness. Don't we rock?
Yeah.
There's a bit of a story always, Adrian, on these CBD certificates. And so these are both baked products. Here's a loaf of bread and here's a chocolate log. And it just shows that as a humble loaf of bread with a bit of care and attention could reach and aspire to be a chocolate log, just in the same way that a humble moon with aspirations and hope and determination could become a star. And this moon, by the way, is the moon at the place I said earlier with the wonderful lighting, and there's a reflection of the moon on the water there, and you can get the gin from them.
Very good. And that CPD certificate is available for download on Veterinary Ramblings.
It is. It is. And there we go. That is.
Actually, we might, we might be missing a trick here, because he says he's involved with the RCVS.
Oh.
So he put a word in for us to get it ranked as proper CPDers.
Well, no, it is proper CPD.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not yet, is it? It's not fully CPD at this point in time.
Oh, no, you're right. There's another step, isn't there?
There is another step.
Yeah, because we can't just give a CPD certificate out and say, there we go, there's your hour's CPD, can we?
No.
Because you've got to reflect on it.
Yeah, the RCVS tells you that.
Yeah.
So we have to reflect. So Adrian, I mean, so that we can put this out as an hour's CPD for, and be eligible for CPD in the eyes of the RCVS, because you will put a word in for us, won't you? Otherwise, I'm going to tell the story.
Right, I'm just wondering which one.
Yeah, well, you better watch out. So that's it. So we don't want to discuss that story live on air. So if you could put a word in for us, please, Adrian, and join us now in a moment's reflection, to reflect upon the quality CPD that we have received on this show today.
There you go. We're reflecting. I always look to my left when I'm reflecting. It's a big bottle of champagne over there, isn't there? Do you see it?
I saw that earlier on. I didn't want to raise it because I didn't want to distract you. And
empty now, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
we did all right tonight, didn't we? We did Bella Moss. We did antibiotics. We did touched on the PSAVA.
Something for everyone, as was said in for weddings and a funeral. Something for everyone.
I think so. So all it beholds us to do is to say thank you very much indeed for listening to Veterinary Ramblings, and thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening, Adrian. And if you've liked what you've heard or you've seen, remember that this show goes out on Spotify and Facebook and YouTube and all sorts of places where you can get the latest updates on what we get up to on Veterinary Ramblings. So please give us a like, give us a share, get your friends to listen, and spread the good news. And if you've got any ideas as to anything that you'd quite like us to cover, drop us a line and we'll see if we can incorporate it on one of our forthcoming shows.
Let us know. It's got to be contentious, otherwise it's not fun.
Absolutely.
And if there's any gin that you'd like us to recommend, then send Mike or myself a bottle.
Thank you very much indeed, Harris Distillery of the island, Harris.
Thank you very much indeed. Cheers.
Thank you very much indeed, Adrian.
Thanks, Adrian.
Raise a glass to you, and may your dog go with you.
May your dog go with you.
Thank you.
Cheers. And cut.
There we go.
How was that, Adrian? Was that all right?
Yeah, it was absolutely fine. Yeah, no problems.
Yeah, did you enjoy yourself?
I did, thank you. Yes, it was good fun.
Hey, Adrian, thanks so much. Thank you.
Very much indeed. And it's been a pleasure meeting you. And may your dog go with you.
Thank you very much. You take care, guys.